Hi, this is Mickey Wren, and today I'm going to walk you through my final project for MIS 5460 Business Analytics. It's a government lien macro and an interface. So the problem. Monthly, the law firm I work for receives data regarding settlements and required holdbacks for government liens. And every time a settlement is paid, outside counsel gives us data for all the settlements that have ever been paid. It has to be compared to the data that we keep in a cumulative historical spreadsheet, and often it doesn't match, which can make analyzing the data difficult. So a solution is required to assist in the analysis of the data by automating the comparison of new data to historical data. Also, to automate the addition of this data to the firm's cumulative report after any discrepancies have been resolved. And finally, to create an interface which allows law firm team members, mainly shareholders, to access the information they require without running the risk of compromising the data. So the solution is being presented as a three-part package, which includes two macros and a VBA user form interface. The first macro, Analyze Data Combined, looks up the historical data from the cumulative report that we keep, and then it pastes formulas, compares it to the new data we're being provided, and highlights any discrepancies between those two, after which those can be looked over by an analyst and corrected as necessary. It utilizes range cell referencing, offsetting, looping, VLOOKUP, and automated cell formatting. So let me show you what those reports look like. This is the cumulative list with all of the settlements that have been run through this program. You can see there's over 20,000 lines of data. And then this is an idea of the holdback report that we receive, with the newest settlement being the one listed last for each client. This group, the last group, is group 50. I should mention that all of the names were removed, all identifying information where clients were removed. I randomized some new names online, and I also randomized some new company names online. So while this data is representative of something you might typically find, it's not actually using data that is viable at this point. Okay, so some challenges that I experienced. You could see there was a lot of blank cells. Sometimes there's extraneous columns that I'm not expecting. There's often random spaces in the headers, which obviously makes them different. And, you know, all of this can vary from month to month with what we're receiving. But let me show you how the first macro works. I'm going to run Analyze Data Combined. It's asking me, is the cumulative report open? It is, so I'm going to keep plowing forward here. It just adds a row at the top. And then you can see at the end here, this is all data that's been pulled using VLOOKUP from the cumulative report, does some simple formulas, and highlights anywhere it's different. Okay. So blank cells, the solution to that was to utilize a key count. Key columns or rows that I know that don't have any blank cells in them, in lieu of using the standard XL down or XL right. And this is an example where I used that. You can see the count here. Extraneous columns, my solution for that was to search for the column that I needed based on the header value. And then obviously in that, if there were random spaces in the header value, I would have an issue, so I chose to just assume that they were there, and I used this worksheet function substitute to remove the spaces before I compared the two columns. So part two is to take that data after it's been checked and add it to our cumulative report. So the macro add to cumulative report does exactly that. It does it by copying the data column by column and pasting it into the cumulative report by searching for header values. The macro automates using range cell referencing, offsetting, looping, filtering, and sorting. So some challenges, exactly the same as I had with the first macro. Blank cells, columns in different orders. Sometimes we've added extra notes columns, extraneous columns, and those were all handled in the same way that I discussed previously. So before we get to this, let me show you what we have here. So this is our newly transformed data, and I am going to run Add to Cumulative Report. It's asking me, is it open? It is. I left this on so you can see how it's pasting it column by column. Okay, so if we look at the holdback data, you can see it copied that last column, pasted it over, and last but not least, it should have sorted it. So every client's data is together. Looks like it did. All of the Group 50 settlements are kind of tucked into the data, which is exactly the way it should look. Okay, so I had a need for dynamic ranges for pastes and sorts, and again I had to use counts instead of the XL down or XL to right, offsetting, and this is a sample of that type of situation. Okay, last but not least, I created a VBA user form. So it was created with the firm's cumulative data report, and the user is able to enter a client number and choose between a couple of different formats of data return. It utilizes, obviously, a VBA user form, range cell referencing, offsetting, looping, and automated formatting. So one of the challenges with this is that I need the users to be able to access the data without compromising the integrity of it. And I could have done this in two different ways. I could have had it open the sheet behind the scenes and close the sheet when it was done with it. That would have been fine. The only reason I didn't do that is because my laptop didn't have enough memory to handle that. So I chose to just hide the worksheet for right now. When I implement it at work, I probably will work off of a separate sheet altogether. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is our cumulative data report. I have hidden the worksheet, and I can just click on Retrieve Report. I'm going to enter a client number, and it is going to return the basic data for that client regarding holdbacks. If I try to enter something that's not a number, it's going to give me a warning that I didn't enter a valid client number. There's a lot of blank numbers in here. If I try to enter one of those, it's going to tell me that the client number wasn't found. And I'm going to choose a different report this time. And I'm going to hit enter instead of hitting OK. That should work too. So you can see this is just more data than the first one provides. I kept the formatting because historically, if changes were made by the outside counsel, it was notated in red. I know that's not the best way to maintain notes on such a thing, but that's the way it's been done. So I did maintain that formatting through here. And then the last thing I'll show you is, originally I was going to also provide holdback predictions, for instance, if there was another settlement. But when I removed all of the identifying information like dates of birth, dates of death, whether they're living, deceased, that type of thing, I need a lot of that data to be able to make that prediction. So for right now it says coming soon, but when I roll it out at work, it should also have this feature. Clear those results. Okay, so final thoughts. I was shocked and amazed at how much looping and offsetting I did. The other thing I learned was I don't think it can hurt to overcode. I just assume there's going to be blank cells and spaces and problems in format and just code for it ahead of time. I think something to be aware of is, regardless of what you plan for, you should check your code periodically, make sure it's still doing what you need it to do. Obviously, Really, the benefits of coding, it saves a tremendous amount of time. It can prevent error in the way of people entering the wrong thing. And it could also open up certain jobs to less computer-savvy individuals, which could be good. And then limitation, that's the same thing I talked about a minute ago. Just you got to check it every once in a while, make sure it's still doing what you think it does. Okay, thank you for listening to my report.